Hello and welcome everybody to Future Friday. We are a little bit late. That was kind of hiccupy. How are you doing, Garrett?
I'm doing well. Stressed out about this situation.
Oh my gosh,
All
it's
right.
technology. What do we do? And that's what happens when we're in a pandemic. Hi, my name is Jackie Kwan. I am co-founder of Uplifter, and we are live here on Facebook. And with me today, as always, the lovely and amazing Garrett Trod, our product expert. Today,
Make me blush. Hello.
are you blushing?
I can't tell.
I can tell you're like at least 2 meters away from me. Today we are going to be diving into the Uplifter settings. So we have a number of things that you can customize through Uplifter, and I know that we have had a lot of clubs that have been with us for a long time and haven't really dove into the different features that you can customize within Uplifter, and we've added a lot of things since you've probably gone live, or you might have started up with Uplifter and didn't know what all of these tabs meant. So today, Garrett is going to do a walkthrough of all those different tabs and all the different things that you can actually customize and configure within Uplifter to make the most out of your Uplifter software. So without further ado, take it away, Garrett.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jackie. So yes, as we noted, we are going to be going through the settings. Now today, we are going to focus on the Uplifter settings, which are available through the administrative side of the site under Settings, Uplifter Settings. Now here you're going to see 5 tabs along the top, and if you only see 4, that means you do need an additional permission known as Merchant Credentials in order to see this Merchant Details tab, and that can be assigned to you via Settings Permissions. Now, the Uplifter settings are primarily focused on the back end of things, the gears and cogs in the back end that make your site function in a particular way. So let's take a look. We're going to start with Site Options, this tab here, and right off the top, we have the live registration status, which can be marked off when you are ready to go live. Now, it is important to note that going live with your site is simply an indicator to Uplifter to let us know that you're done your testing and you're going live, but it doesn't necessarily mean your programs are open for registration. You still control that element and can toggle whether your programs are available to the public or not. Being live is simply a status that tells us you are done testing. Next, we have the email verifications. Now, this feature is enabled by default on all news sites, but if you've been with us for a while, you'll have the option to enable this. And essentially what this will do is when a user signs in, when a user signs up to your site, they'll have an email verification sent to them in order to verify the information that they provided for their account. And this helps sort of reduce the number of bots. I don't think actually any of our sites are seeing bots creating accounts, but this removes and eliminates that ability anyways, and makes it feel a lot more like any other system you might log into, Amazon, things like that, where you have that verification email come in. Next, we have your localization settings. This allows you to set not only a time zone for your site, which will actually localize all of the dates and times for your programs and things of that nature, but you can also set your site languages. Right now we offer English and French, and you can select your supported countries. Now, right now, Canada or US will be selected by default, or whatever country you're in will be selected by default. You can select additional countries here and actually accept their address. You can support addresses from those countries being submitted. Right now, we only have verification on Canadian and American. So if you do happen to accept Algeria, Angola, wherever it might be, they can absolutely enter in their own actual address from that country, but we won't have verification in terms of that being the proper format for that address. Next, we have the age and gender settings, and here within Uplifter, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, but I believe Uplifter is the only system that allows you to create and add your own genders to the system. And is that correct, Jackie? At least to the best of my
To,
knowledge.
to the best of my knowledge, at this point in time, we certainly were the first. Other organizations may have added that as of late to follow suit. But yeah, we were one of the first to allow you to add additional genders to customize how it is that you actually present that information and how you allow your members to identify in terms of your gender.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So right. You can add new genders. You can add, prefer not to say, other, whatever you want to do. And when you do that, you can specify the name and the gender code. And then, of course, you can create requirements and things of that nature that include or exclude those specific genders. And last but not least, if you are connected with Skate Canada, you also have to specify one of the genders that is available within their database. Now, with you've specified a unique gender here, it will have to follow suit with one of the genders that they offer. So another, prefer not to disclose, etc. That's just the way that they've constructed their database, and our database needs to be able to talk to theirs. And so this is the language that it'll use. Next, we have the field edit permissions, and these allow you to toggle whether or not members can update their participants' genders and update their participants' birth dates. Now, it may be true to say that your club or organization has a lot of very strict restrictions and requirements based off of gender or birth date, and so you may not want your members to be able to do this. So you can check this off if you sort of allow your members to sort of freely update their site, but if not, then obviously you can leave those unchecked. And next we have our maximum age, which by default will be, I believe, 15. This is for your tax receipts. Unfortunately, Ontario doesn't have these anymore, but there are still some other provinces out there that do. And so you can set the maximum age that qualifies for a tax receipt. And I think it's 15 everywhere, but you'll obviously know that based off of the province you're in. Next, we have our account settings, and here we can specify shared accounts and whether or not we want to group members into shared accounts for financial data. Now, this essentially is saying, if mom and dad both make an account, do we want to actually group them up? That's quite nice, but you'll want to also consider the repercussions if, a friend of the family happens to sign up a child or something like that. You probably don't want to share financial records for that. So definitely be aware of that, conscious of that, and definitely read through this to make sure that this applies in the way that you want it to. Next, we have the invitation expiry. When your users invite other users, so again, that scenario of mom invites dad or vice versa or whomever, they will have an invitation sent to them via email, and they'll have X number of days to accept that. So this is the number of days they have to accept, and after that, it will expire. So if it happens to expire, then they'll have to have another invitation sent to them. So be mindful of that. Next, we have our instructor settings. Now, we do have an instructor feature Fridays coming up in a little bit, in a couple of weeks there, so we'll go through this in more detail then, but this essentially allows you to specify the number of days before your instructor no longer has access to the participants of their groups or of their programs that they've been assigned to. So you can give them temporary access to participant profile information. They can review that information when it's pertinent to them, and then X number of days after that, that access will actually expire and they can no longer access those profiles. So that gives them the most pertinent information and accessibility. You can also enable or disable the drop-down, the instructor drop-down. This is presented during the time of participant creation, where they'll be able to select an instructor, any instructor that you have created within your system. If you disable this, then obviously that's going to remove that drop-down, and then only from the administrative side would you be able to assign an instructor. There are some alternatives, but we won't talk about those today. Next, we have probably one of the most powerful sections here, the invoice settings section. This allows you to specify invoice item detail locking. For instance, if you are on gold tier or enterprise tier, we highly recommend you opt to the ledger accounts instead of this. If you're on silver, bronze, or light, then the invoice detail locking feature allows you to essentially lock an invoice line so that it's no longer editable, which can be a very important factor if you have already pursued reconciliation with your accounting software on something that took place a month ago. You probably want to say after 30 days, you can't touch this anymore. So that stops people from. We have a waiter in the background, and he just dropped all the plates.
Disaster ensues. On our silver tier, you actually also do have access to the ledger accounts feature. So
yes, you do. My apologies. Thank you so much.
No worries.
Next, we have our cart expiry time. This allows allows you to specify how long it takes before the cart expires. When someone adds something to cart, how long they have to check out before it expires, and frees that spot up. Now, this is important, especially if you're having something that's very, very popular, classes that are very popular, because this is the amount of time that their spot is held for them, and that actually accounts for one of the registration slots. So if they put something into their cart and they've got like 5 days to check out, then that's someone who can't register for that until 5 days has passed. So be mindful of that. Also note that if you do have Interact Online, it does require that your cart expiry is at least 30 minutes. Next, we have some checkout options, the first of which is the invoice total threshold by default, to default by pay by installments. Can't read today. This feature essentially allows you to set a threshold whereby if you surpass that in your cart, the system will automatically opt for the installment structure. So what that means is if I have a program that has installments and it's over $1,000, when someone registers for that, if I set my threshold to under the cost of that, the system will say, okay, it's over this value, so I'm going to use the installments by default. Now, a user may still opt to pay for everything up front. That's their prerogative, but this will select installments by default. And it is important to note that installment structures are based on a product by product basis, a program by program basis. So if they do have multiple items in their cart, let's say a program that does have installments and then an insurance fee that doesn't have installments, this will not magically create installments for that insurance fee. All it's going to do is auto use the installment structure you've built for the programs, but that product or that insurance fee or what have you is still owed up front. Next, we have the default use credit, and this allows you to control how gift certificates and credits on account are going to be used. By default, this little dash dash here, they're just going to be opted into essentially by the user. They can either choose to use it or not to use it. You can have default checked, so this defaults to using the credit, but they can uncheck that if they choose to. And last but not least, they have the always apply credit, which means that it's checked and it will use the credit and they can't undo that. So this sort of forces the use of credit on account if you'd like to do so.
As a side note, and we're going to jump into that sooner or later, I believe on the subsequent tabs, but when you have those features enabled, you have to ensure that you actually have your certificate payment methods as public. Otherwise, they won't be able to actually use those credits that you're asking them to.
Yes, that's very true. Thank you, Jackie. I don't know if that recorded very well. You sounded very skippy to me, so the audio there. But what Jackie mentioned, yeah. But what Jackie mentioned was in order for your credits to apply, if you have this to default checked or always apply, you do need to ensure that your gift certificate payment method is set to public, which we will see in just a moment here. Next, you have your default terms and accounts in arrears, which allows you to specify the number of days someone has before they're placed into arrears. Now, if I owe money, there is a pending status, and the pending status will have a date on which it's expected to be paid. Let's say it's a week from now. If I don't pay it by that week, it then transitions from pending to overdue. And once it's overdue, this is the number of days I have before I'm in arrears. And so if I'm in arrears, I can also toggle as an admin that I do not want to allow them to register for any more stuff until they've paid up. So this is a great way to control, you know, those few and far between, hopefully, but you know, those people that tend to skirt their owing balances. Next, we have the account payment. This allows partial payments on the account, which is quite nice. So if you do want to allow them to pay in bits and pieces there, you can absolutely allow them to do that, which is nice. And then if you are affiliated with one of our affiliates, so Skate Canada, Gymnastics BC, stuff like that, right now it's just Skate Canada for this section here, you will be able to specify what type of information you send to them. As you can see right now, it's sort of blocked off, and I believe this is because Skate Canada has made some changes to their database, and they actually don't accept this information anymore, I don't think. Is that true?
Actually, no, that is not true.
It's not true.
No, there is a different, I think it's because you're connected to the beta database.
Oh, that makes sense. I'm lying to everybody. So this is just because of this demo database here. Excellent. So that is the Site Options tab. Next, we're going to pop over to Uplifter Plan. And on the Uplifter Plan tab here, we will have the account, or the Uplifter account address. And this is the address as it applies to Uplifter to your club. So when Uplifter issues invoices, this is the address that we will issue it to. Additionally, just slightly down here, you'll have your Uplifter support contact, and this is the main contact of your site. This is the one and only person that we will accept requests from in terms of reinstating permission groups or making specific types of changes to your club. So it is important to have this information up to date, and please feel free to send in requests to support@uplifterinc.com if and when this main contact should change, and we'll go through the proper procedures to make sure that that gets updated. Next, we have the Uplifter billing plan. Now, right now, of course, this is one of our demo sites, so it says canceled, but here you can select one of the prepayment options if you want to persist with the current tier that you're on, or of course, you can select the switch plans option and change the plan if you want to select another tier. Maybe you want to go from silver to gold and get those new features and some excellent new options there. You can absolutely do that anytime that you'd like, so you can do that self-serve style. Our next tab is going to be the global payment details, and here we get to specify the currency and the installment structure. More often than not, you probably won't touch these. Generally, if you're in Canada, you'll have Canadian currency. If you're in America, USD, etc., etc. The payment intervals allows you to control the payment structures, or the payment structures that you can create, and restricting yourself doesn't really make sense. So you probably won't actually utilize these. Leaving those all free checked is probably the best way to go. Next, you have your taxes, and here, if you don't want to charge taxes through your system, taxes are already included in all your pricing and things of that nature, you probably don't need to enable this tax option. But if you do want to, if you'd like to have that as a separate entity that you can track and report on, you can absolutely enable your taxes, and you can then reinstate the HST or create a tax of your own in order to apply that to various things. Now, when you are doing so, as you can see with my outrageous tax here at 50%, I can also specify whether or not I want this to apply by default to my programs, my products, or my subscriptions. If I select no on any or all of these, then what I can do is during the process of creating my programs, products, and subscriptions, etc., I can actually choose at that time whether or not the tax should apply. And I can do that even if I set this to apply by default. It's just the other way around. I would toggle it off in that case. So taxes can absolutely be customized and changed. You can really restructure the tax rate, the tax code, and stuff like that. And then, of course, you can report on all of that. Our next tab here is the merchant details, and as a quick reminder, you do need the merchant credentials permission in order to access this, and this is granted through settings permissions. Now on this page here, what you'll see is the merchant details. You'll really have no reason to update this in most instances. Only if you are an organization that is offering multiple merchants will you need to make any changes in this section here, which 99.9% of our clubs are not. So the next section is your billing address, and this is your billing address as it pertains to your club, to your end user. And so this is what's the address that's going to show on all of your invoices when you issue them to your members. Down at the bottom here, we have our payment methods and our payment method groups. And as you can see, payment methods are your check, cash, credit card, etc. And among them is gift certificates. So if we double back on that for a moment where we were speaking about gift certificates, you do want to ensure that your gift certificate payment method is set to public in order to use those predefined settings for the gift certificates that we talked about. But essentially, a payment method is just the way that people can pay. You can specify payment methods are public or not. If they are not public, that means that administrators can still use them throughout the site, but your end user will not be able to see those options during the standard checkout procedures. When you create a payment method, you can specify a reporting name, the checkout text, maybe your cash is going to say cash, stuff like that. You can also specify in advance notification days, which is really great if you're going to be doing credit card installments or anything of that nature, any installments really. You can say, hey, 7 days before that installment comes up, send them an email and say an installment's about to come. And that way you can make sure that everyone's aware. This is also very, very powerful if you are going to add the Interact payment method, because Interact will not allow you to simply process the payment right away. They do need to log in and process that payment on their own accord. So this advanced notification days is very, very powerful. You can let them know 3, 4, 5 days ahead of time, hey, you've got a payment owing coming up. And so please log in and proceed with that. You'll also have for gifts, for credit cards and for Interact, you'll also have the ability to toggle whether or not you want to display specific icons. So for credit card, you can specify, yeah, we take Visa, MasterCard, Discover Card. Most accounts will take Amex unless you've done something very specific with Bambora to restrict that. But you can imply that you don't take Amex by showing these other icons and leaving Amex out. So if you don't want to take Amex, because I think it's a little bit of an extra charge there, you can leave that unselected, and that way it's not shown. When you've created your payment methods here, you've set up all these payment methods, you can then group them into payment method groups. And this is a great way to very quickly select what type of payments you're willing to accept for various things. So here you see I have an all payments. I've got an online only and an offline only. And when we see these options here, you can see that I have different payment methods in these groups to specify what type of payments I'm willing to accept when I select these groups. And so what'll happen is when you're generating your programs, your products, your subscriptions, etc., you can select one of these groups rather than always having to check off each and every one of these payment methods that you allow. Alrighty, so that is the merchant details, and last but not least, we have our billing transaction history. Of course, on our demo site here, this is blank, but on your website, this is where you'll be able to come to see all of the transaction history between Uplifter and your club. And so you'd be able to review past invoices, past payments, things like that, and make sure that everything's on solid ground there, and you can review how the billing works and stuff like that. You can also pull these invoices so you can see them in full detail, and of course print those if you need to print an additional copy. And that is a very fast run through of Uplifter settings. Jackie, would you like to add anything to this?
That was I was actually leery that you'd actually be able to get through all 5 tabs today.
Underestimate how fast I can talk.
Yeah, no, and you did a good job. Of course, there are a lot of nuances with a lot of these settings. Please feel free if anybody ever has questions about, I'd like to check this, but I'm not exactly sure how this will impact us. You watch the video and you're not 100% sure, please feel free to contact us. We can take a deeper dive into your exact Uplifter site and give you some more insight in terms of how some of these settings would affect what it is that you're doing with Uplifter. Additionally, one thing that you may notice is depending on the tier of Uplifter that you're on, I know that Garrett had mentioned some of the different tiers that we have with Uplifter. Some of these features may or may not be available. They'll automatically be disabled, but you'll be able to see them if they are not available on your existing tier, and you can certainly, again, contact us and ask us about the availability of those features in the different tiers that we have available to you at Uplifter. So other than that, it is a lovely May day, and we are just heading into the stretch of Mother's Day. So to all of those lovely mothers out there, I do want to wish you a happy Mother's Day. And we are reaching, hopefully, some light at the end of the tunnel in various areas of our countries. And just want to say a big thank you to all of those frontline workers that have been with us and enduring through this COVID-19 crisis and best for everybody. So everybody, please stay safe. Oh, one last thing. I feel like I always have to have the last word. I'm sorry, Garrett. One thing that I do want to mention is very excited. We are going to be launching our new drop-in features very shortly. You will see them next week when you come back onto your sites. So that means you'll be able to see the new program view page that we had previewed last week, and you'll be able will drop in as well on your sites. And not only that, if you are kind of ramping up and getting ready, crossing fingers, hoping that you might be able to open for summer camps or want to run some online classes and use Uplifter for that and have some sort of drop-in elements, you'll be able to use Uplifter for our drop-in feature starting next week. So feel free to reach out to us if you have questions. And are we going to do a little preview on that next week? Are you going to let me talk? Are you going to let me talk? Yeah.
What? No. Yeah, if you want to do that next week, yeah.
Well, I don't have to.
It does sound like a good idea. I think we should do drop-ins next week, and then we will actually double back on settings the week after. We'll take a look at settings, global settings, and run through all of those tabs together, and just make sure that you guys have a better idea and understanding of all the features and options that you have to make the site feel and look how you want it to feel. Additionally, one last element here, don't forget you can always click on these book icons to be sent to the most pertinent article, and this actually talks a little bit about the Uplifter settings as well. One of our past videos is here, and you can go through these settings in a lot more detail, but perhaps you don't want to read all that dry text. With that said, thank you everyone for joining us. We always appreciate you taking the time, and thank you very much for your patience with us with that rough start there, and I hope that everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.